Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Today, I want to take you on a journey. A journey from cold streets to bright lights. From silence to worldwide laughter. From a hungry little boy to one of the most famous faces in history. This is the amazing story of Charlie Chaplin. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine London in the year 1895. The sky is grey. The air is cold. Smoke rises from tall factory chimneys. The streets are crowded and noisy. Horses pull heavy carts. People walk quickly with serious faces. Life is not easy here. On one of these streets stands a small boy. He is thin. His clothes are too big for his body. His shoes are worn and broken. His stomach hurts because he has not eaten enough. That boy's name is Charlie. It is hard to believe that this poor child will one day make millions of people laugh. But at this moment, there is nothing funny about his life. Charlie was born on April 16, 1889, in London, England. His parents were music hall performers. They sang and acted in small theaters. At first, life seemed hopeful. There was music in their home. There was applause. There were dreams. But dreams do not always stay bright. Charlie's father struggled with alcohol. He drank too much. Soon, he left the family. Charlie and his older brother Sidney were left alone with their mother, Hannah. She tried her best. She worked hard. She sang on stage whenever she could. But something terrible happened. Hannah's voice began to fail. Each night on stage, her singing grew weaker. One evening, her voice completely stopped. The audience laughed at her. Some people even threw things at the stage. For a performer, losing your voice is like losing your identity. Without her voice, Hannah could not work. Without work, there was no money. Without money, there was no food. Slowly, poverty entered their home. They moved from one small room to another. Sometimes they stayed with relatives. Sometimes they had nowhere to go. There were days when they did not know what they would eat. There were nights when the cold felt stronger than hope. Charlie was still just a child. But childhood was disappearing quickly. One day, when Charlie was only 7 years old, his mother became very ill. She could not think clearly. She could not care for her children. The government decided she needed treatment in a hospital. Suddenly, Charlie and Sidney were alone. They were sent to a workhouse. A workhouse was not a happy place. It was built for the poor. Children worked long hours. They cleaned. They washed clothes. They followed strict rules. Food was little. Warmth was rare. For Charlie, it felt like the world had forgotten him. Imagine being a small boy in a large cold building. Imagine missing your mother. Imagine feeling invisible. That was Charlie's reality. But even in that dark place, something special began to grow inside him. Charlie noticed that the other boys were always sad. Their faces were serious. Their eyes looked tired. One day, Charlie did something strange. He made a funny face. He crossed his eyes. He walked in a silly way. He pretended to fall. For a moment, the room changed. The boys laughed. It was not a big laugh. It was not a long laugh. But it was real. And in that small sound, Charlie discovered something powerful. He could change the mood of a room. He could turn sadness into laughter. That discovery was like a tiny light in a dark tunnel. Soon after, Charlie had another chance to stand on a stage. His mother's old theater group allowed him to perform one night when she was too sick to sing. Charlie was only 5 years old when he first stepped onto a stage, but now he was ready to try again. The lights were bright. The audience was noisy. His heart beat fast. For a second, he felt afraid. But then he began to sing and move. People watched him. Then something magical happened. They smiled. They laughed. They clapped. In that moment, Charlie did not feel poor. He did not feel hungry. He did not feel invisible. He felt alive. That feeling stayed with him. As the years passed, life did not suddenly become easy. There were still days of hunger. There were still nights of fear. But Charlie had found something that gave him strength. He had found the stage. When he was 14 years old, Charlie decided he wanted to become a professional actor. It was a bold dream for a poor boy with little education. But sometimes, bold dreams are born from difficult lives. He joined a small acting group. They traveled around England. They performed in small towns and crowded cities. The pay was low. The travel was tiring. But Charlie did not complain. Every show was a lesson. He learned how to move his body in different ways. He learned how to express emotions without speaking. He learned that silence can sometimes be louder than words. People began to notice him. They saw that he was different. He was small and thin, but on stage he felt big. He had energy. He had timing. He had something unique. Still, he was not famous. Not yet. He was just a young man with a dream, carrying memories of poverty in his heart. But the world was about to open a new door for him. A door that would take him far away from the grey streets of London. A door that would change not only his life, but the history of cinema forever. And when that door finally opened, Charlie had a choice. He could stay where he was, safe but small. Or he could step into the unknown. He chose the unknown. And that decision would transform a poor London boy into a global legend. In the year 1910, Charlie Chaplin stood on the deck of a large ship. The wind was strong. The ocean seemed endless. Behind him was England, the country of his childhood pain. Ahead of him was America, a land filled with promise and uncertainty. He was only 21 years old. Charlie had joined a famous comedy group called Fred Karno's Troupe. They were invited to perform in the United States. For Charlie, this was more than just another job. It was an opportunity to begin again. As the ship moved across the Atlantic Ocean, Charlie often stood alone, thinking. He remembered the cold nights in London. He remembered the workhouse. He remembered his mother's broken voice. Those memories were heavy, but they also gave him strength. When he arrived in New York, everything felt bigger. The buildings were tall. The streets were wide. The crowds moved quickly. America felt loud and alive. Charlie felt small again, just like he had felt as a child. But he had learned something important in his difficult years. Feeling small does not mean you are weak. Sometimes it means you are about to grow. The comedy group traveled across America. They performed in theaters filled with curious audiences. Charlie's movements were different from other performers. He was fast but graceful. He was silly but precise. He understood timing in a special way. He knew exactly when to fall, when to pause, when to look at the audience. People laughed. And when audiences laugh, doors begin to open. One evening in 1913, a film producer named Max Sennett came to watch the show. Sennett was searching for new talent for his movie company, Keystone Studios. Movies were still new at that time. They were short, silent, and often simple. But they were growing quickly in popularity. Sennett saw something unusual in Charlie. He saw potential. After the show, he offered Charlie a job in films. The pay was $150 a week. For Charlie, this was an unbelievable amount of money. It was more than he had ever earned before. But there was one problem. Charlie had never acted in a movie. Theater and film were very different. On stage, actors needed big movements so everyone in the audience could see. In movies, the camera was close. Every small expression mattered. Charlie accepted the offer. In early 1914, he walked into Keystone Studios in California. The sun was warm. The studio was busy. Cameras stood on wooden tripods. Actors moved quickly between scenes. Directors shouted instructions. Charlie felt nervous. His first films were not successful. He tried too hard. His movements were too large. He did not yet understand how to act for the camera. Some directors did not believe in him. They told him exactly what to do, and Charlie felt frustrated. He knew he could do better. One day, the director told him they needed a new character for a comedy scene. "Go find a costume," the director said. "Make it funny." Charlie walked into the dressing room. Clothes were hanging everywhere. Shoes were on the floor. Hats were stacked on shelves. He began to choose pieces at random. He picked large pants that were too big. He found a tight jacket that was too small. He chose enormous shoes that made walking difficult. He placed a small round hat on his head. Then he added a thin mustache and picked up a cane. He looked in the mirror. For a moment, he did not see himself. He saw a new person. This character looked poor but proud. He looked clumsy but confident. He looked serious but funny. There was something gentle in his eyes. Charlie walked onto the set wearing this strange outfit. The crew started laughing immediately. That day, a legend was born. The character became known as the Tramp. He was a homeless wanderer with a kind heart. He had little money, but he carried himself with dignity. He often faced trouble, but he never lost hope. Audiences loved the Tramp. Why? Because they saw themselves in him. He struggled. He failed. He fell down. But he always stood up again. The Tramp did not speak, but his silence was powerful. With only his face and body, Charlie told stories of love, hunger, jealousy, and kindness. Within 1 year, Charlie Chaplin became one of the most popular actors in America. His salary increased quickly. Studios competed to sign him. In 1915, he was earning $1,250 a week. This was an enormous amount of money at that time. Just a few years earlier, he had been a hungry child in London. Now, his face was recognized across the country. But Charlie was not satisfied with just acting. He wanted control over his work. He wanted to create deeper stories, not just simple comedy. He believed movies could be art. He began directing his own films. He wrote the stories. He chose the music. He controlled the editing. Every detail mattered to him. In 1921, he released a film called The Kid. It told the story of the tramp finding and caring for an abandoned child. The film was funny, but it was also deeply emotional. Audiences laughed. Then they cried. For the first time, a comedy film touched people's hearts in a new way. Charlie understood something important. Laughter alone is powerful. But laughter mixed with emotion is unforgettable. As his fame grew, so did his ambition. In 1919, he joined 3 other major film stars to create their own company called United Artists. This gave him full creative freedom. He no longer needed to follow strict studio rules. He could tell the stories he wanted to tell. In 1925, he released The Gold Rush. In this film, the tramp travels to Alaska in search of gold. There is one famous scene where he cooks and eats his own shoe because he is starving. It is funny. But it is also painful. That scene came from Charlie's real memories of hunger. The world laughed, but Charlie knew the truth behind the joke. By the late 1920s, Charlie Chaplin was one of the most famous people on earth. His films were shown in many countries. Even though they were silent, people everywhere understood them. No translation was needed. His body was his language. His face was his voice. He had transformed silence into something universal. But the world was changing again. New technology was arriving. Movies with sound were becoming popular. Actors were now speaking on screen. Many silent film stars lost their careers during this change. Charlie faced a difficult question. Should he change with the times? Or should he stay true to his silent style? It was a risk. And once again, Charlie chose the unknown. When sound entered the world of cinema, everything changed. Audiences were amazed to hear actors speak. They heard music, dialogue, and background noise. For many filmmakers, silent movies suddenly felt old-fashioned. Studios rushed to produce talking films. Silent actors worried about their future. Some had strong accents. Some had unpleasant voices. Others simply could not adapt. Charlie Chaplin watched this change carefully. He understood the power of silence. He believed that the tramp belonged to a world without spoken words. In silence, the tramp could belong to everyone. Rich or poor. American or European. Adult or child. Words might limit him. So in 1931, while the world was full of talking movies, Charlie released a silent film called City Lights. Many people thought he was making a mistake. They believed audiences would ignore a silent film. They believed Charlie was refusing to accept progress. But Charlie trusted his instincts. City Lights told the story of the tramp falling in love with a blind flower girl. She believes he is a wealthy man. He does not correct her. Instead, he works hard to earn money so she can have an operation to see again. The film was simple. It was gentle. It was deeply human. The final scene became one of the most emotional moments in cinema history. The girl, now able to see, realizes that the poor man standing in front of her is the one who helped her. She touches his hand. She understands. He smiles nervously. No words are spoken. But millions of people cried. City Lights was a huge success. Charlie had proven something important. True emotion does not need a voice. Still, the world continued to move forward. Technology improved. Sound films became stronger and more creative. Charlie knew he could not ignore change forever. In 1936, he released Modern Times. It was mostly silent, but it included sound effects and music. The film showed the Tramp struggling in a world of machines and factories. In one famous scene, he is trapped inside giant factory gears. The film was funny, but it carried a serious message. It showed how modern industry could make humans feel like machines. It showed how workers could lose their dignity. Once again, Charlie mixed comedy with social commentary. He was not just making people laugh. He was making them think. But his bold ideas soon brought him trouble. In 1940, Charlie released The Great Dictator. This time, he used full sound and speech. In the film, he played two roles, a cruel dictator who looked like Adolf Hitler, and a kind Jewish barber who looked like the Tramp. The world was on the edge of World War II. Many people were afraid to criticize powerful leaders. Making fun of Hitler was risky. But Charlie did not remain silent. At the end of the film, he gave a powerful speech about kindness, freedom, and humanity. He spoke directly to the audience. His voice was clear and emotional. He asked people to fight for a better world, not through hatred, but through love and understanding. The speech shocked many viewers. Some praised him for his courage. Others accused him of being too political. The Great Dictator was successful, but it also marked the beginning of a difficult period in Charlie's life. After the war, political tension grew in America. The government became suspicious of people with strong opinions. Anyone who criticized society could be labeled dangerous. Charlie had always spoken about poverty and injustice. He had always supported the poor. Some people began to accuse him of being a communist. Newspapers attacked him. Government officials investigated him. Rumors spread. The country that had once celebrated him now looked at him with doubt. In 1952, Charlie traveled to Europe for the premiere of one of his films. While he was away, the United States government canceled his visa. They said he could not return unless he answered questions about his political beliefs. Charlie was deeply hurt. He had lived in America for nearly 40 years. He had built his career there. He had made his greatest films there. Now, he felt rejected. Instead of fighting to return, he made a surprising decision. He chose to leave. Charlie moved to Switzerland with his wife, Una, and their children. There, in a quiet house near a lake, he began a new chapter of his life. He was no longer the young man dancing across film sets. He was older now. His hair had turned white. His steps were slower. But his mind was still sharp. In Switzerland, he continued to write music and work on projects. He spent time with his large family. For the first time in many years, his life was peaceful. Still, something was missing. America had once been the place of his greatest success. It had also become the place of his greatest pain. 20 years passed. Then, in 1972, something unexpected happened. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences invited Charlie Chaplin back to the United States to receive a special award for his lifetime achievements. At first, he hesitated. Would the audience accept him? Had they forgotten the accusations? But he agreed to return. At 83 years old, Charlie walked slowly onto the stage of the Academy Awards ceremony in Los Angeles. The audience stood up. They began to clap. They did not stop. The applause continued for many minutes. Some people had tears in their eyes. It was one of the longest standing ovations in the history of the ceremony. In that moment, the anger of the past seemed to disappear. Politics no longer mattered. Rumors no longer mattered. What mattered was the laughter he had given to the world. Charlie spoke only a few simple words. "Thank you," he said. But those words carried a lifetime of emotion. He returned to Switzerland after the ceremony. He spent his final years surrounded by family. On Christmas Day in 1977, Charlie Chaplin passed away peacefully at the age of 88. The small boy from the cold streets of London was gone. But his work remained. Even today, people watch his films and smile. Children who do not know his history still laugh at his walk. Adults still feel emotion in his silent gaze. Why does his story continue to matter? Because Charlie Chaplin showed the world something powerful. He showed that pain can become art. He showed that silence can speak louder than words. He showed that a person can rise from poverty to greatness without losing kindness. And maybe there is something more. Maybe his story reminds us that difficult beginnings do not decide our future. Maybe it reminds us that even when the world feels cold and unfair, there is still room for creativity, courage, and hope. Charlie once turned hunger into humor. He turned rejection into resilience. He turned silence into a universal language. And now, as you listen to this story in English, you are also doing something important. You are learning. You are growing. Word by word, you are building your own future. Charlie's life was not perfect. It was filled with struggle, risk, and change. But he kept moving forward. Just like the tramp, he kept walking, even when the road was uncertain. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. The journey from nothing to something is never easy. But it is always possible. This was the incredible story of Charlie Chaplin, a boy who turned hardship into laughter and left a legacy that still inspires the world today.